The court did not send traitors beneath the hanging stars to kill them. It sent them there to make them confess to madness first. That was what Selene Vale heard, whispered as 2 temple guards dragged her barefoot across the black glass floor of the star chamber, her wrists bound in pale oath cord, her servant's shift thin enough for the winter air to find every bone. Above her, the ceiling held no stone, no beams, no painted constellations. It was a pit of living night, suspended upside down, filled with hundreds of silver stars that trembled as if they were waiting to fall. No one slept beneath that ceiling and woke unchanged. Some screamed until dawn. Some forgot their own names. Some crawled out smiling at empty corners and spent the rest of their lives answering questions no one had asked. Selene kept her eyes lowered, not because she believed looking away could save her, because an oath-bound servant learned early that fear became more useful when no one could see where it lived. Around the chamber, nobles gathered in a half-circle beneath wolf banners, stitched with frost gold thread. They had not come in battle armor or mourning robes. They had come dressed for spectacle, with jeweled collars, silver combs, and soft gloves that had never scrubbed blood from a king's stare. A punishment was easier to enjoy when it looked like ritual. At the far end of the chamber, High Priestess Morwen Sable stood beneath the largest star, her black robes falling in perfect folds around her body. White paint marked her brow in the shape of a closed eye. Her hair was dark iron, braided with thin chains of star metal. She was beautiful in the way a blade was beautiful when held by someone else. Place her under the center fall, Morwen said. The guards obeyed. Selene's knees hit the glass. The floor was so cold it seemed to bite through skin. A laugh drifted from the noble line. She stole prophecy wax, Lady Eveleth Corvin said, her voice sweet with practiced disgust. A kitchen-bred girl trying to read futures meant for kings. Selene said nothing. The accusation was not wholly false. That made it sharper. She had touched the prophecy wax, yes. Not to steal it, not to sell it, not to pry into royal secrets. She had touched it because a younger scullery boy had dropped the sealed bowl while carrying it from the temple vault, and the wax had cracked before the ceremony. Selene had pressed the pieces back together with both hands, so the boy would not lose his fingers for carelessness. The wax had turned silver under her palms. Then, it had spoken one sentence in a voice only she heard. The king is not doomed by love. That was all. 7 words. 7 words had brought her here. Morwen looked down at her with a sorrow gentle enough to make cruelty feel holy. Selene Vale, oath-bound servant of the lower royal house, you touched sealed prophecy without blood. Right temple, right or wolf right. Do you deny it? The oath cord around Selene's wrists tightened. It would burn if she lied. No, she said. A murmur of satisfaction moved through the court. Morwen lifted one hand. Do you claim the prophecy spoke to you? The cord tightened again, eager for pain. Selene remembered the scullery boy sobbing behind the flower bins after the guards took her. She remembered the silver wax warming in her palms. She remembered the words that had shaken her more than any punishment. The king is not doomed by love. Yes, she said. This time the court laughed openly. An oath. Servant hears prophecy now, someone said. Next, the stable dogs will interpret moon law. Selene curled her fingers inward until her nails pressed crescent marks into her palms. She would not cry for them. Tears were another kind of service when the cruel wanted entertainment. A horn sounded beyond the chamber doors. The laughter died. Every noble straightened. The doors opened, and Alpha King Valen Duskane entered the star chamber with winter on his shoulders. He wore no crown. He did not need one. Dark armor fitted his tall frame like night, hammered into shape, and a mantle of black wolf fur hung from one shoulder. His hair was deep brown, almost black beneath the chamber light, tied loosely at his nape. A pale scar cut through one eyebrow and disappeared near his temple, but his eyes were what made the gathered wolves bow their heads. amber gold, cold with command, tired with something no one dared name. Selene had seen him only from a distance before. On stairways, from behind pillars, reflected in polished shields, as he passed with guards and councilmen. The kingdom called him the star-doomed king, because the temple had read his fate before his coronation. His true mate, Morwen had declared, would bring ruin to his throne. Since then, Valen had refused every Luna bond offered to him, every noble daughter placed in his path, every soft-handed woman whose family hoped to turn prophecy into marriage. A king who feared love was easier for priests to govern. Selene had heard that whispered once. The servant who whispered it vanished by morning. Valen stopped halfway into the chamber. His gaze moved first to Morwen, then to the living stars above, then to Selene kneeling beneath them with oath cord burning pale around her wrists. His expression did not soften. That would have been dangerous. But something in his eyes sharpened. "Why is she under the centerfall?" he asked. Morwen bowed. "Because false prophecy must be corrected. Where true prophecy descends, she is a servant. She is an oath-breaker." Selene lifted her head before wisdom could stop her. "I did not break my oath." The chamber went still. Morwen's eyes cooled. Valen looked at Selene fully then. The force of his attention nearly drove the breath from her lungs. It was not tenderness, not pity. It was worse than both. It was the gaze of a man trained to find traps by studying what others dismissed. "The cord did not burn," he said. Morwen's smile remained. "Not all sins require lies, Majesty." Valen stepped closer. The oath cord tightened until Selene's wrists stung. She forced herself not to flinch. "What did the wax say to you?" he asked. Morwen moved between them. The words of contaminated prophecy should not be repeated before court. Valen's jaw tightened. "Then dismiss the court." A ripple of shock passed through the chamber. Morwen's closed-eye mark seemed to darken on her brow. "Majesty, the punishment has already been witnessed. If we halt it now, the Pax will believe you fear a servant's fever. Dream." I asked what she heard. The oath cord pulsed. Selene felt the old command woven into it. Answer royal blood when addressed. Her throat opened against her will. "The king is not doomed by love," she whispered. The stars above the ceiling went out. Every single one. Darkness slammed into the chamber. Someone gasped. A noblewoman cried out. Steel hissed as guards drew blades in the blind. Selene could not move. The oath cord around her wrists burned white-hot, then froze, then fell away in 2 dead loops of thread. In the black overhead, 1 star returned, then another, then 7. Not fixed in the ceiling now, falling. Selene raised her hands without knowing why. The first star dropped into her palm. It should have burned through her flesh. Instead, it melted like cold light into her skin. A second fell. A third. By the 7th, the entire chamber was silent enough to hear Valen draw a slow breath. Selene stal at her hands. Silver constellations glowed across both palms, lines of light crossing old servant scars, forming shapes no priest had ever shown her, and no oath had ever allowed her to know. Morwen whispered one word. Not curse. Not witch. Something worse. Star hand. The living ceiling split open above Selene, and from the darkness a voice older than the royal bloodline spoke to the entire court. The prophecy was cut before it reached the king. Valen went utterly still. The 7 stars in Selene's palms turned toward him like eyes. Then the voice spoke again. The girl beneath the stars is the part they buried. For 3 heartbeats, no one in the star chamber remembered how to move. The 7 fallen stars burned quietly in Selene's palms, their light threading through the old scars left by kitchen knives, boiling water, and oathwork too heavy for servant hands. They did not feel like fire. They felt like cold memories pressing from beneath her skin, searching for a language her body had known before her mind had been taught to forget. Above her, the hanging stars trembled. Not all of them. only those directly over the king. Alpha King Valen Descain stood very still, his amber gold eyes fixed on Selene's hands, as if the light there had reached through armor and touched something beneath his ribs. Around him, nobles whispered prayers, accusations, and half-formed denials. A few backed away from the center fall. Others stared upward, terrified the cursed ceiling might choose them next. High Priestess Morwen Sable recovered first. Cover her hands. The command snapped the guards awake. 2 temple men moved toward Selene, with black silk veils drawn from their belts. The cloth was used for dead stars, failed visions, and prophecies too diseased to be read aloud. Selene had seen it once in the lower temple laundry, stiff with silver stains that would not wash out. Valen's voice stopped them. No. 1 word. The guards froze. Morwen turned slowly. Majesty, uncovered prophecy can infect a chamber. Then the chamber is already infected. Valen did not look away from Selene. The ceiling spoke before every noble present. The ceiling repeated contamination. Morwen's closed eye mark darkened across her brow. A servant touched sealed wax. Her blood confused the stars. Selene wanted to speak, but her throat would not obey. The stars in her palms had begun to move, dragging thin lines of silver across her skin. Not random lines. Shapes. 7 points connected by branching trails, forming a pattern that made several old priests at the western arch go pale. Lady Evelith Corvin, who had laughed first, stepped behind her brother's shoulder. Why does it mark her like that? Morwen's gaze cut to her. Because you are looking too closely. The rebuke silenced Lady Evelith, but it did not silence the room. Valen stepped near to Selene. The stars above him shivered harder. Selene felt the change in the floor before she understood it. The black glass beneath her knees was no longer smooth. Something moved under it, slow and immense, like an animal turning in sleep. The hanging stars did not only hang from the ceiling, they were reflected below, trapped in the glass, watching upward from beneath her. She sucked in a breath. The stars in her palms answered. A vision struck. Not a full picture. A shard. Valen stood alone in a winter chapel, younger by several years, blood drying at the corner of his mouth. Morwen stood before him with both hands lifted to the star ceiling. Between them floated a prophecy scroll cut into 3 strips. 1 strip burned white. 1 strip was hidden inside a black reliquary. The final strip lay against Valen's chest, sinking into his skin like a blade made of light. Morwen's voice in the vision was calm. Your true mate will end your reign. Then another voice, faint and broken beneath hers, tried to speak. Not end. Complete. The vision vanished. Selene gasped hard enough to hurt. Valen saw it. What did you see? Morwen moved toward him. Majesty, do not let her speak. He turned on the priestess. You have said that twice now. For your protection. For my obedience. The chamber went dangerously silent. Morwen's face remained composed, but the chains in her dark hair gave a small metallic whisper. You asked the stars for truth before your coronation. The temple gave you what descended. The temple gave me what it chose. A murmur moved through the nobles. Selene looked down at her hands. The light there pulsed brighter with every word Valen spoke, as if the stars had waited years for suspicion to become sound. She should have been afraid of him. She was afraid of him. He was still a king. Still a man whose command could make her life smaller than a breath. But he was not looking at her as if she had invented this disaster. He was looking at her as if she might be the only witness left alive. That frightened her more. Morwen lifted her hand. Selene Vale is oath-bound. Her testimony belongs to the crown, and her body belongs to the house she serves. If the king wishes her words, the cord can compel them. The dead oath cord on the floor twitched. Selene's blood chill. The pale loops slithered across the glass like cut snakes, crawling back toward her wrists. She tried to pull away, but the stars in her palms pinned her hands open, The cord reached her skin. Valen moved. His hand closed around the cord before it could bind her. The moment he touched it, the glass floor cracked beneath his boots. A low growl rolled through the chamber. Not from any visible wolf. From Valen's shadow. Selene stared. The king's shadow had lengthened across the black glass, darker than the chamber's light allowed. For one breath, she saw the outline of a great wolf inside it. Not fully formed, its ribs banded by faint star-shaped scars. Valen released the cord, as if it had burned him. Morwen's eyes sharpened. Selene saw it then. Not surprise. Recognition. The priestess knew what had just moved inside the king's shadow, and she feared the stars had seen it too. Valen's voice dropped. Why did my shadow answer her cord? Morwen smiled with careful sorrow. Because the girl's contamination is spreading. Selene found her voice at last. No. Every face turned toward her. She swallowed. The cord tried to bind me. Your shadow hated it. Valen looked at her. The air between them tightened. Not tender. Not safe. Something sharper. A dangerous thread pulled between servant and king. Made of truth neither of them had asked to share. Morwen's patience ended. Enough. She raised both hands toward the ceiling. If the servant carries star hand corruption, let the hanging stars drain it before it reaches royal blood. The stars above Selene began to descend. Not gently this time. Hundreds of silver points lowered through the living dark, like a sky turning its teeth downward. The nobles recoiled. Guards fled the center fall. Selene remained kneeling because the light in her palms held her there, open and helpless beneath the cursed ceiling. Valen stepped forward. Morwen's voice cracked like a whip. Majesty, if you enter the fall, the prophecy may read you through her. He stopped. Selene saw the war in his face. Command against caution, suspicion against instinct. The old prophecy pressing its hand over every choice he had refused to make for years. The stars dropped closer. Their light pierced Selene's shoulders, her hair, the thin cloth of her servant shift. Voices began whispering in her ears. Too many futures, too many endings. A crown in blood, a wolf beneath ice, a bride with no face, a king kneeling in a field of fallen stars. She clenched her jaw until she tasted blood. She would not give Morwen screams. One star fell faster than the rest. It struck Selene's right palm and opened like an eye. This time, everyone saw the vision. A strip of prophecy burned above her hand, written in silver fire. The true mate will not destroy the king. Valen took one step closer despite Morwen's warning. The second line appeared. She will destroy the lie that keeps him crowned. The star chamber erupted. Morwen's face went white. Then every star above Selene dropped at once. Valen crossed into the center fall before the court could scream. The first wave of stars struck the black glass around Selene and burst into silver rain. Light scattered across the floor, hissing where it touched noble boots, burning through velvet hems, making wolves stumble back with cries they tried too late to swallow. But the stars that fell toward Selene did not shatter. They slowed. One by one, they turned, drawn to her open hands. Selene could not close her fingers. The constellations already branded across her palms held her still, forcing her to receive what the ceiling had been commanded to drain. Every star that touched her skin entered without heat, yet each one brought a vision sharp enough to cut breath from bone. A crown laid on snow. A wolf with star scars, chained beneath a chapel floor. A woman in black robes cutting silver prophecy into pieces with a knife made of moonstone. A servant girl asleep under a cursed ceiling, while priests wrote lies over her dreams. Selene shook so violently, her teeth struck together. Valen reached her side and lifted his arm, as if he could shield her from the sky itself. The stars bent around him, not away, around. Their light slid over his armor, and revealed marks no one had seen beneath the black steel. Thin silver scars, running from his throat to his heart, in the pattern of a broken constellation. The court saw them and went silent in a new way. Morwen saw them too. Her face hardened. "Majesty, leave the fall." Valen did not move. "Why do the stars recognize wounds you told me were battle scars?" "Because she is making them show what she wants you to see." Selene tried to speak, but another star fell into her palm. This vision was worse. Valen, kneeling years ago in a winter chapel, younger, bleeding, barely conscious. Morwen stood over him with the prophecy strips floating in the air. One strip read, "Your true mate will end the lie." Morwen's hand passed over it. The words changed. "Your true mate will end your reign." Selene cried out. The black glass beneath her knees cracked. Valen dropped beside her, one knee striking the floor hard enough to send silver fractures outward. He did not touch her. His hand hovered near her shoulder, stopped by either caution or fear. "What did you see?" he asked. Morwen's voice snapped. "Do not answer." Selene lifted her head. Her vision blurred, but she found the priestess through the falling light. "You changed it." The chamber stilled. Morwen's closed-eye mark darkened until it looked carved into her skin. "Careful, girl. You changed the prophecy." A ripple of shock passed through the nobles. Lady Eveleth pressed one hand to her mouth. Several priests stepped back from Morwen, not far enough to betray her, but far enough to survive if the ceiling chose a side. Valen's gaze did not leave Selene. "Changed what?" She swallowed. The stars in her palms pulsed, as if demanding she speak before fear could fold her silent again. "It did not say your true mate would end your reign." Her voice shook. "It said she would end the lie that keeps you crowned." The words landed harder than thunder. Valen went utterly still, not because he disbelieved her, because some part of him had been waiting years to hear the shape of the wound named correctly. Morwen lifted both hands toward the ceiling. "The servant is infected with broken sight. Her mind is already splitting beneath the fall. Listen to her." And the madness spreads. The stars above Selene flickered. For one breath, fear entered her. What if Morwen was right? Selene could feel too many visions pressing against her skull, too many possible deaths, too many voices calling from futures that had not happened and ruins that might. The hanging stars had broken traitors for generations. Who was she to survive what warriors had not? Then Valen spoke, low enough that only she could hear. "Look at me." She did. His amber gold eyes were cold, but not with cruelty. They were cold the way a blade was cold when held steady in shaking hands. "Do you know your own name?" he asked. The question should have insulted her. Instead, it anchored her. "Selene Vale." "Do you know where you are?" "Star Chamber." "Do you know who lies?" Her breath caught. Morwen's shadow stretched across the glass behind him, like a long black blade. Selene turned her palms upward. The stars inside them answered. The priestess. The ceiling roared. Not with sound, with light. Every star still hanging above the chamber shifted toward Morwen. For the first time, the high priestess stepped back. Valen saw it. The court saw it. Even Selene, half blinded by prophecy, saw the old fear beneath Morwen's discipline. Morwen lowered her hands slowly. "If you force this path, Majesty, the throne will bleed for a servant." Valen rose. His shadow rose with him. For one heartbeat, Selene saw the wolf hidden inside it more clearly. Vast, dark, star, scarred, its ribs bound by pale celestial lines, not chained like Kadron's wolf from the last story, not cursed in the same shape. This was different. Valen's beast had not been locked away. It had been written over. The false prophecy lived on its fur. Valen's voice carried to every corner of the chamber. "Then let it bleed where everyone can see." Morwen's face went white with anger. She turned to the nobles. "Witness the king's corruption. He accepts a servant's vision over temple law." "No," Valen said. "I accept that temple law fears her hands." Selene tried to stand. Her knees nearly failed. Valen turned, and again his hand moved toward her. Again he stopped short, waiting. That restraint pierced her more deeply than touch. She placed her starlit hand in his. The moment their skin met, the chamber vanished from Selene's eyes. She stood in a field beneath a black sky. Valen stood beside her, but not as king. His armor was gone. His shadow wolf towered behind him, its fur crossed by false constellations that burned into its flesh like brands. In the distance, a closed star hung over a sleeping girl wrapped in servant gray. Selene knew the girl was herself. Morwen's voice whispered from the sky, "Keep her asleep, and the king remains afraid." The sleeping girl opened her eyes. All 7 stars in Selene's palms burned at once. When the vision broke, she was back in the star chamber, still holding Valen's hand before the entire court. Above them, the largest hanging star tore free from the ceiling. It did not fall into Selene's palms. It fell toward Valen's heart. The chamber's light narrowed to a single falling point. Valen did not step away. That was the first thing Selene understood, through the terror flooding her bones. The Alpha King saw the great star descending toward his chest, saw the silver blaze sharpen like a spearhead, and he did not move. Not because he was fearless. His hand had tightened around hers hard enough to reveal the strain in every scarred knuckle. But he stayed, as if part of him had spent years waiting for judgment and was too tired to run from it now. Selene moved instead. She pulled against him, trying to drag him from the center fall, but the stars in her palms rooted her to the black glass. Move. Valen's gaze stayed on the star. If it means to show the lie, let it strike. It may kill you. Then, Morwen has hidden more than words. The calm in his voice frightened her more than panic would have. It was not surrender. It was a king deciding that truth mattered, even if it came through his ribs. Selene looked toward Morwen. The priestess stood rigid beneath the trembling ceiling, one hand raised as if she could command the star back into place. For the first time, her perfect control had cracked enough to show the fear beneath it. Not fear for Valen, not even fear of death. Fear of revelation. The star struck. It did not pierce Valen's armor. It passed through. Silver light sank into his chest, as if his body were made of water, and bone only remembered its shape by force. Valen's breath left him in a harsh sound. His knees bent, but he did not fall. His shadow wolf erupted across the floor behind him, vast and black, its star-scarred ribs flaring with lines of false light. The chamber gasped as one. Across the wolf's body, constellations began to peel away. Not wounds. Writing. Silver script lifted from its fur in long burning strips, each one carrying a line of prophecy that had been carved over the beast's true shape. Selene could read them because the stars in her palms read first. The true mate will end his reign. The loved one will break his crown. The heart he chooses will bury the kingdom. The same doom repeated in different forms, branded again and again until even a royal wolf might mistake fear for fate. Valen stared at the script, rising from his own shadow. His face went empty. Not cold. Hollowed. "How many?" he asked. No one answered. He turned to Morwen. "How many times did you write it into me?" Morwen's mouth tightened. "As many as needed to keep you alive." The answer struck harder than denial. Selene felt Valen's hand loosen around hers, not to release her, but because his strength faltered. For years, every refusal, every lonely winter, every Luna bond rejected, every softer instinct smothered before it could be called weakness, none of it had been prophecy alone. It had been a cage rehearsed into his blood. Lady Eveleth whispered. The priestess marked the king's wolf. Morwen turned on her. I preserved the throne. The black glass beneath her feet flashed white. A small star fell from the ceiling and shattered near Morwen's hem, forcing her back. Selene's palms burned brighter. The living ceiling did not like that answer. Valen looked at Selene then. She wished he had not. because the ruin in his eyes was too intimate for a servant to witness. He was still the Alpha King, still dangerous, still surrounded by nobles who would turn any weakness into a knife by sunrise. Yet in that moment, he looked like a man realizing the voice that taught him not to love had never belonged to fate. Selene wanted to comfort him. She did not know how. Oath-bound servants were trained to carry wine, bloodied linen, sealed messages, blame, not a king's broken life. So she said the only true thing she had. The stars are not finished. His expression tightened. With me? With us. The word escaped before she could recall it. Us. It changed the air between them. Valen heard it. Morwen heard it. The nobles heard it too, and several looked from the king's hand to Selene's as if touch had suddenly become treason. Morwen seized the moment. Do you see? She called to the chamber. Already the servant speaks as if she stands beside royal blood. This is how corrupted prophecy works. It seduces the wounded first. It offers comfort, then command. Selene tried to pull her hand free from Valen's. He did not hold her. That made it worse. The choice to stay became hers. She left her hand where it was. Morwen's eyes sharpened. Valen's shadow wolf lifted its head. The false prophecy strips circling its body turned toward Selene's palms, drawn by the 7 fallen stars. One strip flew loose and wrapped around her wrist like burning ribbon. Selene cried out. The vision came instantly. A nursery with no children. A row of sleeping servants beneath star-painted lids. A woman with Selene's eyes pressing both hands to a prophecy bowl while priests dragged her away. Morwen, younger, watching from behind a black veil. A baby girl's palms wrapped in linen before the first star mark could show. Selene stumbled back from the vision, but Valen caught her this time not by command, not in public claim, only with a hand braced at her elbow, steady enough to keep her upright, and careful enough to let her pull away. She did not. What did you see? He asked. My mother, Selene whispered, though she had never known her mother's face until that moment. I think they hid her too. Morwen's expression went still. Valen saw it. You knew her mother. No. Another star dropped from the ceiling. Morwen flinched before it fell. The star struck Selene's left palm and opened another line of light across her skin. This time, the vision did not hide inside her mind. It spread above the chamber for everyone to see. A woman in servant gray stood under the hanging stars 20 years earlier, her hands glowing with the same silver constellations. She was not screaming. She was laughing through tears as stars gathered in her palms. A priest shouted that star hand blood must be put to sleep before prophecy escaped temple keeping. Then Morwen stepped forward and placed 2 fingers against the woman's brow. Forget the sky, the younger priestess whispered. The vision shattered. Selene could not breathe. The chamber no longer laughed. Valen's voice was deadly quiet. You buried star hand blood in my own house. Morwen lifted her chin, but the ceiling above her darkened. I prevented prophecy from being handled by servants too ignorant to understand what they caught. Selene's hands closed for the first time. The stars did not vanish. They waited inside her fists. All my life, she said, voice trembling. I thought my hands were only useful because they could scrub floors clean. She opened her palms. 7 stars rose above them, brighter than before. You feared them because they could hold what yours had to cut. The largest star above Valen pulsed once more, and every false prophecy strip around his shadow wolf tore free at once. Morwen screamed a command to the guards, but the stars did not fall on Selene now. They fell on the locked temple vault beneath the floor. The black glass floor rang like a struck bell. Every noble in the star chamber felt the sound under their feet. It traveled through bone, boot, and blood, shaking loose dust from seams no one had known existed. Beneath the center fall, where Selene knelt with 7 stars burning over her palms, thin cracks spread outward in a perfect circle, not breaking, Unlocking. Valen looked down. So did Morwen. The difference was that Valen looked as a man seeing a hidden wound beneath his own house. Morwen looked as if she had been caught with her hand still inside it. "Step away from the floor," she ordered. No one moved quickly enough. A second note rang through the chamber. The cracks widened, and from below came a cold silver glow, not like torchlight, not like moonlight, but like old words, remembering they had once been true. The black glass folded downward in 8 triangular pieces, revealing a stairwell that descended beneath the star chamber. The air that rose from below smelled of dust, winter roses, and sealed ink. Selene's hands began to ache. The stars above her palms pulled toward the stairwell, eager and frightened at once. She felt them trying to show her something, but the visions came broken. Shelves of silver tablets, prophecy strips pinned beneath black nails, sleeping girls with linen-wrapped hands, a wolf lying under a sky with no stars. Valen's jaw tightened. "What is under my chamber?" Morwen's answer came smooth. "A temple archive. Beneath my floor? The star chamber predates your throne, and yet my throne bleeds whenever you speak of it." A dangerous hush followed. Morwen lifted her chin. "Majesty, there are records below that should not be touched by untrained blood. The servant has already disturbed enough." Selene almost laughed, but the sound would have broken inside her. Untrained blood, servant hands, ignorant touch. Every word Morwen used was a glove over fear. Valen turned toward Selene. "Can you stand?" She tried. Her knees shook once, then held. The light in her palms made her fingers look less like her own. Silver constellations crossing scars she had earned carrying trays, scrubbing floors, and catching blame before it struck someone smaller. Valen offered his hand. This time, the whole court watched. Selene stared at it. A king's hand did not belong stretched toward an oath-bound servant in public. If she took it, every whisper in the chamber would change shape by morning. If she refused, Morwen would call it proof that the stars had made her unstable. Valen did not reach farther. He waited. That was why Selene placed her hand in his. The moment they touched, his shadow wolf appeared across the floor, huge and dark, its false star scars flickering where the strips of rewritten prophecy had been torn away. It did not snarl at Selene. It lowered its head near her feet, wary, wounded and listening. A few nobles gasped. Morwen's closed-eye mark pulsed black. "Majesty," she said softly, "the court sees your judgment bending." Valen did not look at her. "Good. Let them see it move." He descended first. Selene followed, because the stars in her hands gave her no other road. The stairwell narrowed around them. Each step was carved from black stone and inlaid with tiny silver points, like a dead night sky turned upside down. Behind them came Morwen, 3 priests, and half the court's fear pressing down the passage like a second darkness. No one wanted to be left above when truth was being opened below. At the bottom waited a vault with no door. Only a wall of star metal covered in handprints. Small hands, large hands, hands burned into the surface in silver. Selene stopped. So abruptly Valen turned. "What is it?" She could not answer at first. Her own hands were burning in recognition. The 7 stars lifted from her palms and drifted toward the wall. One by one, they entered the old handprints, lighting them from within. Names appeared beneath them, faint but readable. Amara Vale, Selene Vale, Nerith of Low House, Sablanukt. Dozens. No, more than dozens. Selene stepped closer, her throat closing. They were Starhand. Morwen's voice hardened behind her. They were unstable vessels of ungoverned prophecy. Valen looked at the glowing names. They were servants. They were threats. The vault wall rang. Selene placed both palms against it. For one breath, nothing happened. Then every handprint answered. The wall dissolved into falling silver dust. Beyond it lay the true archive. Not shelves, beds. Rows of narrow stone sleeping slabs filled the hidden chamber, each one holding a silver bowl at its head. Some bowls were cracked, some were covered with black cloth, some still held hardened prophecy wax, pale as frozen milk. Above every bed hung a small star, dim and trapped inside a glass cage. Selene's stomach turned. This was not where prophecies were stored. This was where star hand blood had been kept asleep. Valen stepped beside her, his face carved in cold fury. Morwen, the priestess, did not flinch. They heard too much, caught too much. Prophecy in unruled hands can destroy kingdoms. Selene walked to the nearest bed. The silver bowl at its head was marked with the same constellation now glowing in her palms. A strip of linen lay beside it, brittle with age. When she touched the cloth, a vision opened, not violent this time, but quiet. A young woman with Selene's eyes sat on the bed, holding a newborn girl. A priest demanded the child. The woman kissed the baby's palms and whispered, "Sleep lightly, little star. One day, fall upward." Selena broke, not loudly, not for the court. Her breath simply left her, and when it returned, it hurt. "My mother," she whispered. Valen's hand hovered near her back, then stopped. Again that restraint. Again the space left for her to choose whether she wanted comfort. She wanted it. That frightened her. Before she could move, Morwen raised a silver knife and slashed her palm over the nearest prophecy bowl. The trapped stars in the glass cages flickered black. Valen drew his sword. "Stop!" Morwen's smile turned thin. "The archive was built with fail-safes, Majesty. If Starhand blood wakes what was buried, the buried must burn." Black fire crawled from bowl to bowl. The sleeping stars began to scream. Selene felt every scream in her hands. Not sound, prophecy dying before it could be spoken. The chamber tilted around her. Too many visions opened at once. Valen crowned in ash, Morwen holding a starless throne, Selene lying asleep forever with her palms sewn shut, the kingdom kneeling beneath a false sky. She staggered. Valen caught her this time, one hand at her waist, steady and warm through the thin cloth of her servant shift. "Tell me how to stop it," he said. Selene looked at the burning bowls. The answer rose from every handprint, every sleeping star, every stolen woman beneath the chamber's dust. "Not stop," she whispered. Her palms opened. The 7 stars above her hands multiplied into hundreds of small lights. Catch. The glass cages shattered. Every trapped star in the archive fell at once, not toward the floor, not toward Morwen's black fire, but toward Selene's open hands. Valen pulled her against him as the chamber filled with silver light. And beneath the last sleeping slab, something ancient opened its eyes. The chamber did not grow louder when the sleeping thing woke. It grew still. The black fire, crawling from Morwen's prophecy bowls, froze mid-flame. The shattered glass cages hung in the air like broken ice. Even the hundreds of falling stars slowed before reaching Selene's hands, their silver light trembling around her, and Valen as if the hidden archive had taken one breath and held it. Beneath the last stone slab, 2 eyes opened in the dark. Not wolf gold, not human, starlight white. Selene felt Valen's arm tighten around her waist. His sword remained pointed toward Morwen, but his body shifted almost imperceptibly, placing more of himself between Selene and the thing beneath the slab. Not enough to trap her, enough to say danger would meet him first, if it came forward. Morwen noticed. Her lips curved. "You wanted truth beneath the chamber, Majesty," she whispered. "There it is." The stone slab cracked from below. Dust lifted. A shape rose out of the darkness under the bed, thin at first, almost skeletal, made of white star smoke and black bone shadow. Its head was wolf-like, but older than wolves, crowned with antlers of broken constellations. Its ribs glowed with tiny trapped futures. Its paws did not touch the floor. They hovered above the stone, as if the world had never fully claimed it. Several priests fell to their knees. Lady Evelith screamed once and covered her mouth. Valen's shadow wolf bared its teeth. Selene could not move. The stars meant for her palms circled her now, hundreds of them, waiting to see whether she would catch them or let them die in Morwen's black fire. Her hands shook beneath their light. Every scar in her skin had turned silver. Every old burn, every cut, every oath mark she had earned as a servant now looked like part of a map no one had let her read. The ancient creature turned its white eyes toward her. "Starhand," it said. The word did not enter through her ears. It entered through her palms. "Selene Gospet." Valen looked at her. What did it say? Before she could answer, Morwen stepped closer to the creature and bowed her head. "Witness of the deep fall, by temple custody and star right, I command you to name the corruption in this servant." The creature's eyes shifted to Morwen. "Custody is not ownership." The words struck the archive. Bowls shattered along the nearest row. Black fire recoiled from the silver beds as if ashamed of its own hunger. Morwen's face hardened. She touched sealed prophecy. She caught what you cut. She is oath-bound, bound to silence, not to lies. She is dangerous. So is every hand that reaches truth before power can dress it. The chamber fell into stunned silence. Selene's breath trembled. For the first time, something ancient had spoken of. Her hands without disgust, without fear, without hunger. Not as servant hands, not as thief's hands, not as a girl's hands reaching above her place. Hands that caught. Valen's voice lowered. "What are you?" The creature turned toward him, and the false scars across his shadow wolf flared. A witness star. Buried when priests began preferring prophecies that obeyed them. Morwen snapped. "It is a corrupted relic." The witness star opened its jaws. Every remaining covered bowl in the archive unveiled itself at once. Prophecy wax gleamed under cold light. Some bowls held strips sliced into pieces. Others held words scraped almost clean. One bowl, blacker than the rest, floated from the far wall and stopped before Valen. His name was carved along its rim. Selene felt the 7 stars in her palms burn through the circling storm. "That one is yours," she whispered. Valen stared at the bowl, as if it might bite. Morwen moved quickly. Too quickly. She cut across the chamber. Knife raised, but Valen caught her wrist before the blade reached the wax. The sound of his grip "Do not touch it," she said. "Why?" "Because a king who reads every future becomes useless." Valen's eyes went colder. "And one who reads only yours becomes obedient." Selene reached for the bowl. Morwen's gaze snapped to her. "If she catches the missing strip, everything changes." Valen did not release the priestess. "Then let it." Selene placed both glowing hands beneath the black bowl. The wax split. A strip of silver prophecy rose, torn at both ends, shaking like something that had been hidden so long it feared air. Words burned across it. "The true mate will end the lie that keeps him crowned." Then another line appeared beneath it. "She will not wear his power. She will return his wolf to its own sky." Valen's shadow wolf froze. Selene felt the entire archive lean toward that final word. Sky. The star scars across the wolf's ribs were not only false prophecy, they were bindings, keeping his beast under a ceiling that had never belonged to it. The king had not merely been made afraid of love. His wolf had been trained to live beneath a closed sky, never able to run toward the future unless the temple named the path. Valen looked at Selene. This time there was fear in him, not of her, of what she might have to do. "What does it mean?" he asked. The witness star answered. "A star hand does not predict the path. She catches the falling truth before it breaks. To free a written wolf, she must hold the sky open." Selene understood then Why so many star-hand women had been put to sleep. Holding truth was one thing. Holding a sky was another. Morwen saw the understanding in her face and smiled through her fear. There. Now she knows. If she saves your wolf, Majesty, the stars will burn through her first. Valen released Morwen so abruptly she stumbled back. No. The word was not command. It was refusal. Selene looked up at him, surrounded by falling stars that had waited generations for a hand brave enough to catch them. You do not get to forbid me from knowing what I am. His face tightened, pain and anger cutting through the gold of his eyes. I can forbid you from dying for my wolf. You can try. For one breath, the archive held them like that. King and servant, prophecy and fear. Two people standing on opposite sides of a choice neither had asked for. Then Morwen drove her knife into the black bowl. The prophecy strip split down the center. Valen roared. The witness star reared back, and every falling star turned red. Blood-colored light filled the hidden archive. It poured over the stone beds, across the cracked prophecy bowls, along the handprint wall that had dissolved into dust. The silver stars that had once circled Selene like waiting truths now burned red at their cores, each one trembling between prophecy and wound. Morwen's knife remained buried in Valen's black prophecy bowl, and the split strip above it twisted in the air, like a living thing cut through the spine. Selene felt the tear in her own hands. She cried out and staggered, but Valen caught her before she hit the stone. His arm wrapped around her waist, strong and too careful, as if he feared the wrong pressure might break what the stars had already opened. The witness star reared above them, antlers of broken constellations scraping the vault ceiling. Cut prophecy becomes blood debt. Morwen pulled the knife free. A red star fell toward the nearest sleeping slab. The moment it touched the stone, the bed cracked open, and a woman's scream rose from beneath it. Not a body, not a ghost fully formed, but the echo of a star hand forced to sleep while her prophecy was stolen. Another red star struck another slab. Another scream answered. Selene's breath broke. These were not visions anymore. They were debts waking. Valen turned on Morwen. Stop this. Morwen's eyes shone with furious triumph. You wanted the archive opened. Let it testify. You cut the prophecy to prevent a servant. Blood girl from steering a king. Selene lifted her head. No. You cut it, because the full prophecy would have ended your hold over him. The red stars trembled. Morwen smiled. And now, the full prophecy will end you. She raised her bloodied knife toward the circling lights. The red stars began falling faster. Selene pushed away from Valen and forced herself upright. Every instinct begged her to close her hands, to hide them, to stop catching what hurt. But the screams from the sleeping slabs entered her palms like hooks. She saw women with linen-wrapped fingers, girls drugged under star ceilings. Servants told their dreams were madness until they forgot how to wake. Her mother's face flashed among them. Not asleep now. Waiting. Selene opened both hands. Valen grabbed her wrist. No. She looked at him. His fear was naked now, stripped of crown, armor, and command. That frightened her more than the falling stars. If I do nothing, they burn, she said. If you take all of it, you burn. Then help me hold it. The words left her before she knew whether she had the right to ask. Valen went still. For years, he had been told love would ruin him. For years, every prophecy carved into his wolf had trained him to step away from any hand that reached too close. Selene saw that old command move through him like a blade under skin. Then he placed his palm beneath hers. Not over. Beneath. The sky does not belong to you alone, he said. The red stars struck. Selene screamed, but Valen's shadow wolf surged around them, vast and star-scarred, catching half the impact along its dark ribs. Red light sank into Selene's palms, and Valen's shadow at once. The pain was unbearable, but shared. It did not break her. The witness star lowered its head. A king who shares prophecy cannot be ruled by fear. Morwen's face changed. For the first time, she looked not angry, but uncertain. The split prophecy strip above the bowl began to mend. Not perfectly. The scar remained, a red seam down the center, but the words burned clear again. The true mate will end the lie that keeps him crowned. She will not wear his power. She will return his wolf to its own sky. Then a final line appeared, hidden until blood had paid for the cut, and the star hand shall wake the names put to sleep. Every sleeping slab in the archive opened. Silver figures rose from them, women and girls made of starlight and shadow, their palms glowing with constellations. Some were old, some young, some wore servant gray, some wore temple white, proof that Morwen's fear had reached even her own order. None looked at Selene with pity. They looked at her with recognition. Morwen stepped back. "No," she whispered. The awakened star hands turned their palms toward the high priestess. Across Morwen's black robes, hidden words began to appear, stitched in red light over her heart, sleeves, throat, and hands. Prophecies she had cut. Futures she had altered. Names she had buried. Each line surfaced on her body like wounds deciding to speak. The court crowded at the stairwell behind them saw everything. Lady Eveleth backed away, trembling. One of the old priests dropped to his knees. Another began tearing the star metal chains from his robe as if they had become serpents. Valen's voice was low and deadly. "How many?" Morwen said nothing. The red writing answered for her. Hundreds of names crawled across her skin. Selene's mother's name burned brightest. Amara Vale. Selene stepped forward, the stars still glowing in her hands. "What did you do to her?" Morwen's composure shattered into something crueler than fear. "I saved prophecy from becoming a servant's toy." The archive darkened. The awakened star hands lifted their glowing palms. Selene felt the truth gathering. Not a vision now. A verdict. But before it could fall, Morwen seized the cracked black bowl and slammed it against the floor. The archive split open beneath her feet. A stair of red starlight appeared, descending into a deeper chamber. Morwen dropped through it without hesitation. The red stairs began closing behind her. Valen drew his sword and moved to follow, but the witness star blocked the path with one antlered shadow. Below waits the first lie. Selene looked down into the closing red light. From the depths, her mother's voice rose softly. "Little star, do not let him enter alone." The red stair narrowed, as if the dark beneath the archive were trying to swallow its own mouth. Selene moved before fear could dress itself as caution. The awakened star hands parted around her in silence, their glowing palms lowered not in obedience, but in witness. Valen stepped with her, sword drawn, shadow wolf moving along the stone at his side. The witness star watched them descend with its white eyes, and for the first time, Selene understood that some ancient things did not guide because they were kind. They guided because truth had waited too long to care whether anyone survived it. The deeper chamber waited below the archive like a wound beneath scar tissue. Its walls were made of red glass, not polished, not clean. Red glass with shadows trapped inside it, hands, faces, scraps of mouths frozen mid-speech. At the center stood Morwen Sable before a starless altar, one hand pressed against the cracked black prophecy bowl, the other bleeding freely over a book bound in white hide. Selene stopped. The book breathed. Valen's shadow wolf snarled. Morwen looked up slowly. Her robes were still covered in red-lit names, but here, beneath the archive, they no longer burned as accusations. They writhed like chains, trying to return to their owner. "You should have stayed above," Morwen said. Valen's sword lowered an inch. "What is that book?" Morwen smiled without warmth. "The first mercy." Selene's palms ached. The stars inside them recoiled from the altar. A whisper moved through the red walls. First lie, not spoken by the witness star now, spoken by the chamber itself. Morwen laid her bleeding hand on the white-bound book. Before kings, Before temples, before your proud wolves learned to mistake violence for destiny, prophecy was wild. It fell into any open hand. Servant, queen, child, murderer. No order. No hierarchy. No protection. The first star hand saw 20 futures in one night and chose the one that saved her daughter. Selene's throat tightened. Morwen's eyes found hers. Every corruption began there. The red glass wall behind the altar brightened. A vision formed. A woman with Selene's eyes stood in a burning village beneath a sky raining stars. In one future, her child lived and a kingdom starved. In another, the kingdom survived and the child died. The woman caught both prophecies in her hands, sobbing, then hid one beneath her tongue and gave the priests the other. The vision cut out. Selene could not breathe. Valen looked at her, not accusing, but sharply aware of the trap Morwen had opened. Morwen's voice softened. That was the first lie. Not mine. Hers. Star-hand blood was never pure truth. It was choice pretending to be holy. Selene's hands trembled. All this time, she had believed Morwen feared Starhands because they caught truth before priests could corrupt it. But the first lie had come from a Starhand mother, a woman trying to save someone she loved. A dangerous, human reason. Morwen saw the doubt enter her and stepped closer. I did not invent corruption, Selene Vale. I inherited the duty to control it. Valen's voice cut low. Control is not correction. No? Morwen turned on him. How many futures would you allow one grieving girl to choose before you called it treason? 1, 10, 100? You hate me because I did with law. What love does in secret. The words struck too close. Selene felt them. So did Valen. His false prophecy had been born from this same argument. That love could not be trusted with power, that fear made cleaner decisions, that truth needed rulers more than witnesses. The white-bound book opened by itself. Pages fluttered, though there was no wind. Names appeared. Not the names Morwen had buried. Starhand names. Beside each one was a choice. Saved son, lost city, spared mate, broken treaty, hidden plague, delayed war, crowned false heir to prevent famine. Selene saw enough to make her knees weaken. Morwen had not built her tyranny from nothing. She had built it from every time prophecy had been used by love, fear, grief, and hunger. That made the evil heavier. Not cleaner, heavier. Valen moved closer to Selene, but did not touch her. You do not have to answer for every hand before yours. Morwen laughed. Does she not? You let kings inherit crowns, soldiers inherit wars, servants inherit oaths. But she must not inherit the cost of her blood? Selene looked down at her palms. The stars there had dimmed. For the first time since they felt less like gifts and more like knives someone had placed in her hands while she slept. Then her mother's voice came from the red glass. Selene. A figure appeared inside the wall. Amara Vale stood trapped behind the glass, made of silver light and exhaustion. Her hair floated around her face as if she had been drowning for years. Both her palms were pressed to the other side of the red pane. Selene stepped toward her. Mother. Valen reached instinctively, then stopped. His restraint felt like pain now, not distance. Amara's eyes filled with grief. Do not let her make truth feel guilty for what fear did with it. Morwen's face hardened. Amara lied, too. Yes, Amara said. To save my child from you. The chamber shook. The red glass cracked around her palms. Morwen seized the white-bound book. Enough. She tore one page free. The altar split open, revealing a hollow beneath it, filled with black, sleeping stars. Not silver, not red, black, dead futures. Prophecies cut so completely that no Starhand had ever caught them. Morwen dropped the page into the hollow. A black star woke. Valen's shadow wolf lunged, but the star struck it first. His beast staggered. Pinned by darkness, Valen dropped to one knee. Selene screamed his name. Morwen lifted the cracked bowl above the hollow. If prophecy cannot be ruled, it will be emptied. No more star hands. No more false mates. No more kings ruined by what they choose. The black stars began to rise. Selene looked at her mother, trapped in glass. At Valen, kneeling under a darkness meant for his wolf. At the book of old star hand failures trembling on the altar. Then she understood the difference Morwen had spent her life burying. Truth could be misused. But silence could only serve the one holding the knife. Selene opened her hands. The 7 silver stars returned to brightness. "No," she whispered. "We do not answer lies by killing the sky." The red glass shattered behind Amara Vale, and every trapped star hand in the walls opened her eyes. The red glass did not fall. It turned to silver dust before it touched the floor, and from every broken wall of the deeper chamber, women stepped out of captivity. Some were old enough to have wrinkles carved around their starlit eyes. Some looked barely older than Selene. Some wore servant gray, some temple white, some torn court silk, but every one of them carried constellations in her palms. They did not come forward like ghosts begging release. They came like witnesses who had finally found the door to the courtroom. Morwen backed toward the altar. The black stars rose behind her. They were not bright. That was what made them terrible. Each one swallowed the light around it, leaving small holes in the air where futures had been cut so completely no hand had caught them. The chamber bent inward around them. Even the awakened star hands hesitated. Valen remained on one knee, his shadow wolf pinned beneath a black star lodged between its ribs. The beast did not howl. It strained in silence, its star scars blazing, as if the false prophecy branded into it wanted to return. Selene moved toward him. Morwen lifted the cracked bowl. "Take another step, and I empty the rest." Selene stopped. Amara Vale stood among the freed women, pale with exhaustion, one hand pressed to the broken place in the red glass where she had been trapped. Her eyes found Selene's with a grief that had waited 20 years to be allowed tenderness. "Little star," she whispered. Selene almost broke at the sound. Morwen saw it and smiled. "There, that is the weakness. Star hand blood always reaches for love first. That is why it cannot be trusted with prophecy." Valen pushed one hand against the floor, trying to rise. The black star sank deeper into his shadow wolf. Pain flashed across his face, but his eyes stayed fixed on Selene. "Do not let her make mercy sound like guilt," he said. Morwen snapped the bowl toward him. "A king who begs a servant for salvation should not speak of guilt." "He is not begging," Selene said. Her voice was quiet. The chamber heard it anyway. Selene looked at the black stars, at the white-bound book, at the pages listing every star hand who had bent truth for someone beloved. Morwen wanted her to deny them, to pretend star hands had always been pure and priests had always been monstrous. But truth did not become stronger when stripped of every scar. "My bloodline made mistakes," Selene said. Morwen's eyes sharpened. The freed star hands lowered their palms. Listening, Selene's throat tightened, but she continued. "Some saved children and lost cities. Some hid plague to stop panic. Some chose love and made war. That is true." Morwen smiled. "At last. But you took their failures and built a prison from them. You did not guard prophecy. You kept every hand beneath yours, so only your fear could choose." The silver dust on the floor stirred. Amara's palms brightened. Selene turned to the awakened women. "I will not pretend our hands never lied." Then she faced Morwen. "And I will not let your lies be called sky." The 7 stars in Selene's palms rose. Not alone. One by one, the freed star hands lifted their hands. Silver constellations answered across the chamber. Dozens of patterns, hundreds of points. The black stars trembled for the first time. Morwen thrust the cracked bowl downward. Then catch what cannot be saved. The black stars fell. Selene reached first. Valen shouted her name. The first black star struck her palm. Cold entered her so completely that her heart seemed to forget its rhythm. A dead future opened inside her hand. Valen ruling alone under a starless ceiling, safe and empty. Another followed. Selene asleep forever, the kingdom peaceful because no truth disturbed it. Another. Morwen crowned in temple white, every prophecy clean, every life obedient, every love trimmed before it could become dangerous. Selene's knees buckled. Valen dragged himself forward, despite the star pinning his shadow wolf. His hand found the floor beside hers, not touching yet, fighting to reach without making the choice for her. "Selene," he said, voice ragged. "Give me half. You cannot take this. I am not taking." His fingers opened beneath the black light. "I am asking." The difference struck through the cold. Selene placed her burning hand over his. The black star split between them. Valen's shadow wolf convulsed, but it did not break. Its jaws opened, and for the first time, the beast breathed upward, not toward the closed chamber ceiling, not toward Morwen's cut prophecies, but toward an unseen sky it had never been allowed to run beneath. The witness star's voice rolled from above like distant thunder. A written wolf must choose its own sky. Valen looked at Selene, pain bright in his eyes. "Open it." Morwen screamed. "No." Selene understood. She did not need to hold the whole sky forever. She needed to catch the truth long enough for the wolf to choose it. She turned her palms upward. "Run," she whispered. The star scars across Valen's shadow wolf tore open, spilling silver light. The beast rose from the floor, shaking off the false constellations branded into its fur. Above the chamber, stone vanished. Archive, star room, palace. All of it disappeared from sight. For one impossible breath, replaced by a vast black sky, filled with living stars. Valen's wolf leapt, not away from him, through him, into him. The Alpha King gasped as the beast returned to its own body, not as a cage, not as a curse, but as something alive enough to choose him again. Morwen staggered backward, her bowl cracking apart. The black stars lost their hunger. The freed star hands caught them one by one, not to revive every dead future, but to witness that they had been killed. Each black star became a dark mark in an open palm, a record no priest could scrub clean. Selene caught the last. It was heavier than the rest. Inside it, she saw herself beneath the hanging stars, asleep forever, while Morwen whispered over her closed hands. The prophecy was never about the future Luna. It was about the servant girl. Selene opened her eyes. Morwen had taken up the silver knife again. This time, she did not aim for the bowl. She aimed for Selene's heart. Valen moved between them. The blade entered his side. For one breath, the chamber froze. Then Valen's wolf roared from inside his own body, and the sky above them began to fall. The first star struck the floor beside Morwen and turned the red glass white. Not silver. White. The color of bone cleaned by winter. The color of truth after every beautiful lie had burned away. Morwen staggered back, the knife slipping from her hand still wet with Valen's blood. Around her the deeper chamber unraveled. The red walls cracked. The altar split. The white-bound book burst open page by page, as if invisible hands were tearing out every mercy that had been used to excuse a prison. Valen stood between Morwen and Selene. One hand pressed to the wound in his side. Blood darkened his armor. Selene reached for him. "Valen!" His head turned at the sound of his name, and for one breath the chamber, the falling sky, the freed star hands, and Morwen's ruin all seemed to fade behind the look in his eyes. Not command. Not fear. Recognition. "I am still standing," he said. It was a king's answer. It was also a lie. His knees buckled. Selene caught him before he fell fully, though his weight nearly drove her down. His shadow wolf surged behind him, whole at last but weakened by the blade, meant for her heart. It pressed close around both of them, a dark, living shield against the falling stars. Morwen laughed through blood. There, the prophecy still finds him. Love ends kings. Selene looked at the priestess. For years, Morwen had cut futures into shapes that obeyed her. She had taken warnings and made them cages. She had taken fear and called it wisdom. She had turned Starhand women into sleepers, servants into ghosts, and a king into a man afraid of his own heart. But now every star hand in the chamber lifted her palms. The falling stars slowed. Selene understood. This was not hers to carry alone. She placed one glowing hand over Valen's wound and raised the other toward the broken sky. No. Love ends. Lies. The awakened star hands answered. Silver light moved from palm to palm, not as obedience, not as worship, but as witness shared at last. The black stars caught in their hands darkened into records. The red stars cooled into warnings. The silver stars gathered over Selene's raised palm, forming a crownless constellation that stretched across the open chamber like a new sky being written without permission. Valen's wolf breathed against her back. The wound beneath her hand began to close, not cleanly, not without pain, but honestly, flesh knitting around truth rather than false prophecy. Valen sucked in a sharp breath. His hand closed over hers, not to take the starfire, but to steady it. Morwen's face twisted. You cannot let every hand hold prophecy. They will choose wrongly. They will lie. They will ruin what they love. Selene's voice shook, but it did not break. Then we will answer for our choices in the open. The white-bound book rose from the altar. Its pages tore free and flew around Morwen, each one glowing with a buried name, a cut sentence, a sleeping girl, a king frightened into solitude, a servant punished for hearing truth too early. They circled faster and faster, until Morwen stood inside a storm of her own corrections. The witness star's voice rolled through the chamber. Let the cutter be read. Morwen screamed as the pages struck her skin. Not burning. Writing. Every altered prophecy she had hidden appeared across her hands, throat, face, and heart. No blood could cover them. No robe could hide them. Lines of silver truth marked her from brow to wrist. She fell to her knees. The falling sky stopped. Above them, the vast open darkness steadied into living night. Stars hung there now, not trapped in cages, not trembling above a cursed ceiling, but wide and bright and unreachable by knives. The red chamber dissolved. When the light faded, they stood once more in the star chamber above, before the entire court. Nobles crowded the edges. Priests had fallen to their knees. Guards stared at Morwen as she appeared in the center fall, branded by the prophecies she had cut. Behind Selene, dozens of awakened Starhand women stood in silence, no longer asleep, no longer hidden under the palace floor. Valen straightened with effort. Selene tried to pull her hand away from his wound. He held it for one heartbeat, then released her before holding became claim. That small restraint nearly undid her. Morwen lifted her marked face. Majesty, if you destroy the temple's right to govern prophecy, your court will drown in rival futures. Valen looked down at her. His amber gold eyes were cold again. But this time, the cold belonged to judgment, not fear. The court has already drowned, he said. You taught it to breathe lies. He turned to the gathered priests. The star ceiling is no longer temple property. Every prophecy archive will be opened. Every sleeping star hand will be named, awakened if she can be awakened, and buried with honor if she cannot. A tremor passed through the chamber. Valen's gaze moved to the nobles. No prophecy may be cut, sealed, or rewritten by a single hand again. If the stars fall, They fall before witnesses. Lady Evelith Corvin lowered her eyes. One by one, the court followed, not because magic forced them, because the ceiling above them had changed. The hanging stars were no longer hanging, they were floating free. Selene looked up and saw the pit of living night soften into a true sky, deep blue-black and endless, with silver constellations moving like wolves through distant snow. Her hands still glowed. She curled them slightly, unsure what to do with power when no one was ordering it from her. Valen noticed. Of course he did. He faced her before the entire court, no crown on his brow, blood still drying at his side, his shadow wolf standing behind him beneath its newly opened sky. "Selene Vale," he said, voice carrying through every tier of the star chamber. "Oath-bound servant of my house, star hand of the returned sky, witness to the prophecy my throne did not deserve." Her throat tightened. "I owe you truth," he continued. "I owe you protection. I owe you the freedom my house failed to give." The nobles waited for him to claim her. Selene felt it. So did he. Valen looked at her hands, then back to her face. "But I will not make another oath around your wrists." The words entered her more deeply than any vow. He drew his dagger. The court tensed. Valen turned the blade on the royal oath ring at his own finger and cut it free. The black gold band struck the glass floor between them. "From this hour," he said, "Selene Vale serves no house by cord, debt, or inherited silence. If she remains in this court, it is by her will. If she leaves it, every road opens under my guard. If she stands beside me, it will be because she chooses the place, not because prophecy put her there." The star chamber held its breath. Selene looked at the severed oath ring. All her life, her hands had belonged to work, blame, service, and silence. Now they held scars, stars, and the terrible right to choose. She stepped over the broken ring. Valen did not move toward her. He waited. That was why she went to him, not as servant, not as future Luna, not as a prophecy made flesh for a frightened kingdom. "Os Selene." She placed her star-marked hand over his heart, where the last false prophecy had been torn away. "If I stand beside you," she said, "the sky stays open." Valen's wolf lowered its great head behind him. Valen's mouth softened, not into a smile, but into something braver. "Then I will learn not to fear the stars." Above them, one final star descended. It fell slowly, gently, into Selene's open palm. This time, no vision struck, only warmth. Across her skin, a new line of prophecy appeared, bright enough for the whole court to read. The king was never doomed by love. Selene lifted her eyes to Valen. He covered her hand with his, lightly, as if holding starlight required permission, and for the first time in a generation, the star chamber did not punish anyone for sleeping beneath its sky. It let dawn in,